So what you guys have for a new console is the Yamaha LS932. The LS9 is a platform. The 32 denotes how many channels you have available to you right out of the box. Okay, so we have 32 physical inputs on the back of this console. As I mentioned earlier, those are XLR inputs only that are mic or line level inputs. On this side of the console, we have 16 outputs, okay, that are XLR only. We also have 2 card slots in the back. The card slots can be used for a number of different options, one of which is the Aviom card, which we are utilizing to send to your personal monitor system. Okay, the other card slot can be used for an ADAT out. It can be used for, you know, a multiple assortment of things. When AGI had its LS932, we actually had both card slots outfitted with a digital snake card so that we could run another 32 channels in addition to the 32 local via a piece of Cat5 and have our inputs all controlled that way. So digital was a little cleaner. But we're using your guys' existing copper snakes, okay? So what we have is we have all 32 inputs available to us on the top layer of the console. So much like your other analog desk where everything was there, we have the same thing. All of our inputs are here. But what we need to pay attention to is this little section right here that says layer. This lets me know which layer I'm looking at, because I can have up to 4 layers that I can look at. So we're presently looking at inputs 1 through 32. I can also look at 33 through 64. So if I look beneath this little line here, I can see that I've got 33 through 64. And then I've got my master section, which is what is written down here on the very bottom, which is mix 1 through 16. It gives me the ability to have 8 matrices. And then it also lets me look at my mono and my stereo master. Now my stereo master is what we're using as our main outputs, okay? So in this layout, as well as in either one of those sections, this is my main speaker output. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. We finally have the ability to have a custom fader. So if we're running, you know, extra inputs and I have to go between layers, I can actually customize one and say inputs from the first layer and inputs from the second layer can all be on the same layer here via the custom section. But since you guys are using less than 32 inputs, you're going to be using 1 through 32 and master most frequently. On that desk, you're used to starting at the top with your gain and then flowing down through your EQ section and then through your auxiliary outputs to your mute and then finally to your fader in order to adjust things. On this desk, we can see up here on this right-hand side that we actually have our hot gain or head amp, okay? This is also known as our preamp that's in the back of the desk. Then we see that we've got on the screen 2 dynamics engines. These are used for compression, gating, limiting, companding, so on and so forth. Okay, advanced mixing features that we have the ability to use. Okay, then what we have is we have this section here. This is our EQ section. That EQ section is also located over here with 3 rotable encoders. We also have 4 buttons that light up lows, low mids, high mids, and highs. That denotes what parameters we're adjusting with these 3 encoders. So if I wanted to adjust my high frequency, I could increase and decrease that level there by adjusting this bottom one, which says gain. Then we have our frequency adjustment. So on your analog console, that was predetermined for you in your lows and your highs. Then you had a sweepable mid. This allows us to have sweepable frequencies for lows, low mids, high mids, and highs. So we can pinpoint any one of those 4 filters and say this is what we want to do. Okay? So with that, we also have the ability to have what's called an adjustable Q. The Q is narrow, or we can make it wide.
Okay.
So we can have a narrow band or a wide band. You may also know it as a notch filter, if you've heard that. It allows us to notch for things. With the adjustable Q, we can also increase that or we can decrease that. So we can boost or cut by utilizing our gain. This section over here on the left-hand side is our mix sends. Okay, so on that console, you've got your 1 through 6. 1 through 4 can be selectable between pre-fade and post-fade. And then 5 and 6 are predetermined post-fade, which means pre-fade happens before the fader, which means no matter what I do with this fader, once I have that level set, it's not going to mess with that send to the monitor. Okay? So with this one, we have the ability to have up to 16 different sends. And all of those can be configured in pre or post. As we have them set right now, I've got 1 and 2 is pre, 3 is post, 4 through 12 are pre, and then 13, 14, 15, and 16 are post-fade. So in advance of me coming down here, we had talked that the sub send was gonna be on an auxiliary. So that's why that guy is post-send fade, okay? And then 13, 14, 15, and 16 are post-fade because those are routing to our built-in effects units. So naturally, we don't want those to be pre-fade. If they are pre-fade, then if I bring this fader down and my vocalist is singing up there and I bring it down and they continue to speak, we're still going to hear that reverb or that effect or that ping pong sound, or if it's really fun, the pitch bender, you know, give an alto or a tenor a baritone or a bass voice or make them sound like Minnie Mouse. That's kind of fun too. We don't want to hear that coming back through the mains, so that's why they're post-fade. If we bring them back here, then they'll also be brought back through the house send. Okay? Are we doing good so far?
Mm-hmm. So far.
All right, awesome. So whatever I adjust here will come out of the mains here by default. Mm-hmm. If I wanted to adjust a monitor send, then I need to select what monitor I want. So say I had 2 monitor mixes on stage. I've got this wedge and that wedge. I can press this button here, and then I can rotate this select send, and you can see that that level increases and decreases as I adjust that. If I wanted to adjust monitor 2, I'd press 2 and increase and decrease that send. If I wanted to adjust effects for a specific input, then I would press there and increase or decrease that effect. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so I have to select what I want to have happen. Which one do I want to adjust?
Okay.
And you look at me and say, Ray, that seems a little convoluted. And I go, it's pretty basic, it's pretty simple. But there's a faster way. Because these 32 faders are digital, or the console's digital, these are actual faders, you know, they're tactile. They have built-in motors. I can go to what is called a sends on fader mode, where all of these guys now become my monitor mixing surface. So I have access to all 32 inputs, just like I do here for mixing for the house. I can mix all 32 inputs for a monitor send. In order to do that, I simply press this again, and notice how all the fader select lights lit up. That's now telling me that in this upper left-hand side of the screen that I'm looking at mix 1, monitor 1. Now I can say I want some more drums, I want some more bass, I want some more electrics, I want some acoustic, I want some keys, I want some vocals, so on and so forth. I can make those adjustments really fast, press this again, and now I'm back to my house mix.
And now what you just did will be there.
And what I did, the next time I go back there, it's there.
Okay.
So all I did is press that button, so I selected which one I want, and then I press it again. And I now am in sends on fader mode.
So the challenge for somebody walking in is knowing that this is monitor 1 and this is effects 2, and which
Correct.
button does which thing.
Correct. Yep. So, if I wanted to get this back to 0, I could just bring these guys back and start over fresh and anew. But if we've got the same worship team last week as we've got this week, and my vocalist is happy, and I want the same mix I had last week, well, as a starting point, what you did will be recalled from the week prior, as long as you save it to a scene. What is a scene, you ask? I'm glad you asked.
It's just convenience.
So, in this upper left-hand side, we have scene memory. We have the ability to store 299 scenes within this console. All of the parameters will store. So, we get the basic scene set up, and this is where we're at. Okay, awesome. Now what I want to save that so that when we rehearsed on Thursday, that when I come in on Sunday, I don't know what happened between Thursday and Sunday that may have messed up my mix. You know,
It always happens.
there's a luncheon, there's a kids' activity, a youth night, there's, you know, a memorial service in here, a wedding where they're using the sound system, and it's like, oh, I don't know what all these things do, but you know what? I want to hear my music and I want to hear that mic, and so I'm going to change all this stuff. Well, you can come in here and come down here to this little button right here that says recall, select it, and it'll recall all of your saved parameters right to the surface. And you don't have to remember that monitor 1, channel number 3 had about this much level to it, and that one had this much, and you're not having to make pencil marks everywhere trying to recall what you did.
What do you
That all
have
saves.
space-wise for naming those?
So
Character
naming
wise.
them, so if you look here, I've got WPC Basic here. Then I also have the ability to write comments over here. So one of the practices that churches typically do is that they'll do the date, and then under the comments section is they'll actually do just a little detail of, this is worship team with Tim,
Right, so that's-
3 guitars.
Do you have
And
the
they'll
ability
move forward
to
that way.
lock out one of the settings with a password and not others?
So there are ways that you can set up user profiles so that when somebody comes up to this console, they have a certain level of permissions. Meaning you're allowed to turn things on and turn things off, and that's it. Or EQ adjustment, or routing, or patching. I mean, there's a lot of stuff within this that's very powerful that you can say, nope, when you walk up, unless you have the password, you're only being operated as a guest. Okay? Those are things that you guys set. That's not something that I set, because number one, I believe that people learn by doing, and if I do everything for you, and something changes, you're gonna be calling me going, Ray, how do I do this? And I'll say, I can walk you through it, but did you do it yourself? And quite honestly, I like sleeping in on Sunday mornings. I don't go to church until 11:30. It's my one day of the week to sleep in. So, 3 services in my church. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. So I also believe that you guys should set up most of your EQs. So before I get out of here, we'll probably do like a mic check with a headset, you know, once I kind of get that stuff dialed in. But back to feature set of the board. You also have the ability to come in here and do scene focuses, fade times, playbacks. Those are typically used in theaters so that when you have a performance where you're doing a show and it's like, okay, act 1, we're doing this. Scene 1, we're doing this. And now we're going to scene 2, and you can program these buttons over here, which are user-defined keys, to advance your scenes. And you can set fade times to transition, so your background music is transferring all at the same time and smoothly, and this mic's coming on and that mic's going off, so on and so forth. So it can get rather intense. I don't want you to get wrapped up in that. I want you to know how to mix on the board, basically. So we also have the ability to have monitors, okay? This is telling us what are we listening to when we listen to our headphones. We should only use headphones at the first starting out point for identifying problems. Should never mix using headphones. Just throwing that out there. This thing has a built-in oscillator. Okay, what that does is that allows us to listen to different frequency from 20 hertz to 20,000. It also has pink noise, it has white noise. I don't recommend turning those on in church. Reason why is because if we come in here and we turn it on and we listen to pink noise and we say that our level is going to be coming out of main left and main right, that's the last thing we really want to be hearing during pastor's sermon on Sunday.
I'd like just a thought. Let's talk about the flood, shall we?
Yeah.
Doesn't that depend on which pastor?
That one would,
Is my hearing aid going off in church? We really don't want to be
I
listening
actually
to
hear
that
this a
either.
lot over on the other side, or something like that.
So that's why
in stereo.
we typically don't want to be playing around with oscillators during church. This is where we have a talkback mic, so we can actually use a talkback mic here. We can program one of these buttons over here just so that on and off is our talkback. So that way you're not having to choose one of these, but I believe right now I've got this guy set up as your talkback mic. So we can also do this. The next button down, this is our setup menu. This is where we go in and we program things. Okay, so when I was talking about pre-fade and post-fade, this is where we can assign pre-fade and post-fade. This is also where we can assign our outport setups. So what plugs on the back here are actually sending to the stage. That makes pretty basic sense, right? Okay. This is one that you need to know about. This is our Aviom output. Right now, we're looking at slot number 1 because I've got it plugged into slot 1, and we're looking at outputs 1 through 8. This is telling me that 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, 5 is 8, 6 is 6, 7 is 7, and 8 is 31. Where are my other 8? Glad you asked. They're right here under slot 1, 9 through 16. That's where the other 8 of your 16 channels that appear on your personal monitor mixes appear. Okay, this is where we can program those things. If I wanted to change one of those devices or one of those direct outs, I just hit enter and I come in here and I select from my 32 that I have available to me. I also can pick from 33 through 64, or my cascade out. You're not doing that, you don't need to know about it. Make sense?
It does. Is that all button driven or is that touchscreen also?
It's button only.
It is button only.
Yep, this one doesn't respond. You'll just get fingerprints on it, which is pretty fun to watch. It's like, how come this isn't happening?
Oh, yeah.
It's not there. It doesn't matter how hard you press.
Or how many?
Or how many
times. If you keep pressing the screen, you'll just get fingerprints.
All right.
So,
Unless you get banned, press it with a hammer.
I got one of those out there. I got my pickup right out here back.
so this is also right at the very top where we see that our phantom power is turned on as a master, okay, as an overall whole. By default for you guys, that will remain on.
Good.
That way all your beta microphones can still operate. Okay, the next channel down, or the next button over is channel job. What is a channel job? The first tab that I see, so if we look here, much like a filing system, I can see that there are other tabs behind it. If I look closely, this is channel linking. Channel linking allows me to pair an odd with an even. Notice I didn't say an even with an odd, because it's only odd to even. But the fun part is that if I wanted that one and that one to be joined, I can do that. I get in the habit of saying only odd to even because I typically want to link things that are right next to each other. When you link things that are far apart on a console, many times you forget what you did and you start to cause yourself more issues than really what you have. So we're gonna unselect those. And what I did is I've got your different inputs that are stereo inputs, so iPod, computer, DVD, CD, keyboard. Oh, hey, there we go. Done. So, the other things we can do in here is we can do mute groups, meaning that we can say that all the band is on a mute.
Yes.
Okay, all the vocals are on a mute. So all of our sing mics. Okay,
Yes, sir.
we can say that those are all on a group.
Everybody but the pastor on mute is helpful.
Yeah. So this is where we can program those, and then we can say which one you're associated with.
Yeah,
Or
we
the
just
other-
do this, yes, right, just,
Yeah, we have,
or solo, you can do the solo.
is that getting into that automated church?
We have a pastor's mute on
Pastor
the, on
mute
the
that goes
board
into
in the
effect
other
every
room.
morning at a certain time.
Time.
Well, I was telling Barnabas,
starting at,
That's right.
see, that is
Kick the
behind
box,
this
kick
perfect
the box.
church building, and what it is, you come in here and there's one row of seats. And so everybody sits, as soon as this row is full, it moves forward, and another row comes up. As soon as it's full, another one then moves forward. And they said, but what happened is one time the pastor was going, went a little long, and all of a sudden the trapdoor opened underneath the pastor and dropped him out and literally collapsed.
That is the perfect.
So the next the next parameter that we're looking at is recall safe. Recall safe allows you to go and to put things into effect that will remain as they are from scene to scene to scene. So if we have pastor's mic dialed in and we want to make sure that that moves forward, we can put recall safe on that. And that means that when I recall something, it's going to stay at its same parameters. Okay?
And I'm guessing you can take the pastor's mic and dial it in 3 times, same one with different setting.
Uh-huh.
So there you
We can store it many times. So
So
channel,
you've got Chris and Barnabas and Lori, and
Yep.
and they'll be different settings. Same
so we can do channel jobs, okay? What, under this guy here, we've got our channel copy. So if I moved electric guitar 1 to a different input, I can just hit copy that feature, paste it on this fader, and I don't have to remember all my little settings. So that's a cool thing. Next button down is we have the recorder. One of the cool things about this desk is this allows us to record to flash drive. Okay, so a USB stick right here on the side. We can also play back to that, to a couple of predetermined channels on here. So typically if that's gonna happen, that's where I recommend going down to the next layer for that feature. You cannot do both of them at the same time. Okay, you cannot play back and record simultaneously. You say, where are my meters? Well, we've got meters here on all individual inputs, but I want to look at things as a whole. Well, this allows me to pick what I'm looking at. So this is 1 through 32. If I depress it again, now I'm looking at 33 through 64. Now I'm looking at my output meter. Now I'm looking at my custom fader. Makes sense? So it follows this feature there. Okay. The rack. The rack is what we are looking at, much like this. Okay, but it's all within the desk. So 1 through 4 are set up as graphic EQs. Graphic EQs that we would typically use on monitors, on wedges, to find sweet spots and to be able to identify problem frequencies and reduce those little nuances. Okay, so that's where we use those. We don't want to use a graphic on the mains. What happens when we use graphic on mains is that many times we can get into too many issues, self-induced issues, as opposed to actually making better strides forward. That's why we're going to dial in the processing unit for you, so you don't have to use a graphic on the main. Okay, racks 5 through 8, this is where our effects are at. Woohoo! Effects, built-in effects. Woohoo! So we have a hall on there, we have a reverb room, we have a reverb plate, and we've got a mono delay that are predetermined. Should you not like those, we can make sure that our window here is lit up, hit enter, and then we can scroll through all the built-in effects. Okay? Each one of these effects also has parameters within it that you can manipulate. I think that's kind of fun. That's all of these guys here. My recommendation is get used to mixing with effects and then worry about adjusting parameters.
Thing is that that thing is
You're a better
catching the
door than a
screen, which
window.
I'm.
No, but as you can see, I can see everything
Okay.
that he's doing on a
So-
global basis here.
That is the overview of the console. Now to get into the next little step of the console, which is how do I actually mix?
Okay.
Everybody with me so far?
So far.
Okay.
Any questions on the layout of the desk?
Just gonna take some time,
It will take some time.
getting speed on all this.
Okay, so one of the things of the layout of the desk that I did not cover, that I intentionally didn't cover because I wanted to see how close you guys are paying attention to the desk, whether it is the flashy, shiny things or the knobs over here. Okay, so these little four guys here are rotable encoders. These four rotable encoders are effect returns. Okay, so I just got done talking about effects. I had said earlier that we've predetermined 13, 14, 15, and 16 to be our effect sends. If we think about this in the analog world, we've got our console. We've had 5 and 6, aux 5 and 6 that we turn up and turn down to send things to the effect unit in the rack. Out of that effect unit, we had to come back into a couple of channels on the desk in order to hear what that effect unit was doing. Am I correct? So, because this is a digital desk, this is allowing us to send from within the console to a rack within the console with our effects units. But now we have to be able to get them back in order to adjust their levels. We predetermined that these four guys are going to be used over here. Why? Because they're stereo encoders. So we're getting a true left and a right back into them, but merely adjusting them with a single knob. They also have their own mutes,
Okay, great.
turn on and turn off. That was one of the
Yeah,
things that
that's
we had
big.
covered. We wanted to be able to, what happens when the song's over and we don't want to hear that effect anymore. We just want to be able to mute them. They have their own mutes.
Beautiful.
They also have their own meter on there so we can see how much signal we're bringing back into the console.
So that's where now if Zach starts talking, we hit mute, and then Zach starts singing, we unmute it, and I've got control over that.
That is correct.
You don't have to slide it up and down.
That is correct. So, glad you guys asked the question. All right, almost. Almost. You guys got to be awake. So, how do we actually mix on this desk? We need to make sure that anything we want to adjust as far as parameter-wise, we have to select it. So, right now I'm looking at my drums. This little window in the upper left-hand side tells me what I'm looking at. Okay? I still recommend going through and putting labels on here while you're getting used to how this is going to go. That's actually what this little space right here is for, to put labels on there. I typically do my inputs up here, and if I need to do another row of labels for my outputs, monitor 1, monitor 2, effect 1, effect 2, effect 3, effect 4, record 1, record 2, cry room, all of that, then I do my outputs down low. That way, because my hands are going to be here, most of the time I'm going to get my outputs assigned during practice. But in the middle of a service, I need to see what I'm adjusting quickly. So this allows me to say, oh, there's that input, I need to select it, now I can make my adjustments. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to first select what channel I want to work on. At that point, now on the screen, I'm dealing with the parameters that are specific to that input or that output. So if I wanted to give more low frequency to my drum kit, I could select my lows, and because I'm in drums, I can increase that level, and you can see on the screen that I'm increasing it.
You increase that with gain?
With gain, correct. So if I select channel 10 for my auxiliary percussion, I can see that I can increase and decrease that frequency. The key is to select it. Does that make sense? I want to select, then I want to find what I want to adjust.
Okay. Got it. And you're working one at a time.
I'm working one at a
As opposed
time.
to an analog board that you could slide 4 things.
Well, I can slide 4 things
Right.
here.
But you're really only adjusting, right now, you're only adjusting the auxiliary percussion
Correct.
as far as.
On the screen.
On the screen.
Yeah, because when if you're thinking an analog desk, you're typically doing one adjustment here and moving a fader even over
Yeah.
here. So it's a lot of the same concepts, it's just getting used to, I'm only working off
Have
of
to
one
go.
central system.
Right.
I'm selecting and I'm working.
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize efficiency. So it's like, okay, what am I adjusting? Select it, make my adjustments,
So what
and
we
mix.
lost is the 32 strips above, but it's now 1, and we have to use the select button, because we only have one view, not 32 views.
Correct.
But unless you have 32 hands, it doesn't really make a difference.
Not so much.
You can't do multiple, with the slides, yeah, but you know, it's really hard. But
Yeah,
we
it's
can do
just,
slide with your elbow.
it's just remembering when somebody says, hey, could you do such and such with my guitar?
Right.
You don't just go to that, you have to go,
Right.
let me
Select.
select guitar,
Yep.
now I can make
one
it.
extra
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most of the comments that we get when we uninstall an analog desk and we put in a digital desk is, man, it looks so much simpler. Well, it really is. Because if you think about it, how many times on an analog console have you gone to adjust something on one channel and you realize you're one channel strip over? It's like this way you're identifying what you're adjusting and then you're doing it. So it really speeds up
Because it does show up.
that
on
feature.
verified yes,
Because
I-
it's like,
It
oh,
is.
there's my
It
aux
is.
perk.
It is.
Okay, so a couple of the more advanced things that you guys should be aware of. Number 1 is EQ. Okay, actually, number 1 is this console sounds so much different than your Allen and Heath console that you had. Okay, digital desks sound different. No ifs, ands, buts about it. Okay, some of them sound warmer, some of them sound a little bit more transparent. Yamaha is a Japanese brand, so therefore there's a definite Japanese side. Whereas Allen and Heath is a British desk, which sounds more British. No, it doesn't have an accent. You know, this one has a different top end, whereas in the Allen and Heath board, it's a little warmer through your mid-lows. There's all different types of sounds that you will experience when you actually get a console in place, which is why we also reprogram your processor and dial in the mains. Okay, so that's one thing to be aware of. The other thing to be aware of when we're dialing in our initial signal flow is that our head amp, okay, is our gain. Digital consoles, you can typically run them hotter than you can their analog counterparts. Okay, 0 dB dBu on our analog console is minus 18 on our digital desks. Okay, so you'll see green LEDs here, and as I increase that, then you'll start to see your caution lights. Ultimately, you'll see your peak lights, much like you will on an analog console. Where do we want to set our gain? Our gain on a digital console, like I said, should be right around minus 18. We want to be just kind of, we want to be tickling those dudes. Okay, if we're up here at over or at 0, then you're going to be peeking out that channel strip and it's not going to be happy. Okay, so we want to set that just so that we're hanging right about there,
Which is different than what we're used to.
which is different than what you're used to with that desk. Okay, the next things that we want to address is our EQ section. Okay, because that's where you're going to be spending most of your time. You mix with EQ. You've got faders, but you don't mix with your head amp or your gain. Okay, EQ is really where you find the issues and you make your boosts or your cuts in order to make that particular input sound like that particular input should actually sound, if that made sense. Okay, so with my little toggles button section over here, I'm going to come down here to EQ. That's a little easier on the eyes. What I did is I selected that little button that said EQ right here. See how that's flashing? And I hit enter. That explodes that section so that it's now occupying a wider screen width, and we're not having to squint, you know. Me at almost 35 years old, and I'm not having to bust out trifocals with plus 80 zoom just to be able to read the screen. Okay, what this section shows me is this shows me right off the get-go what my input and my output metering levels are. Because when we boost a frequency or we cut a frequency, we're manipulating that signal. So naturally, we're going to be adding level to it, or we're going to be taking level away from it. So if we really crank the low end in order to feel the kick, then we can see what our input reference signal is, and then see how much we're adding to it so that we know if we're peaking it at the EQ section or not. Kind of cool, yeah? What we also have in here is we have attenuation. You guys, for the most part, aren't going to be dealing with attenuation. So that stays 0.0.
Okay.
Make sense? I like things I don't have to
I
mess
was gonna
with.
say, I
Then-
like the ones that we don't deal with.
The next little area right here is our high pass filter, HPF. Presently, it's not engaged. High pass filter allows the highs to pass. Makes sense? So as you can see here, we're rolling off low frequency at 80 hertz or 80 cycles. I can say, nope, I want to increase that to 600 hertz. I don't know why you would do that, but you could. What the high pass filter allows you to do is to roll off those low frequencies. Where is that used? Many times on instruments that we're trying to get rid of some of that low end on, but primarily on voice, where we want to get rid of plosives, the hard consonants, the P's, the T's, the D's, the G's, that sort of thing. That air movement of where that puff of air is hitting the diaphragm of that microphone, and it's causing that microphone to go
Plosives.
plosives. So we want to select that.
Didn't know they had a name.
And filter that stuff out.
Opposed to glottis.
Okay? So where do we filter that out? It's different for every single person. Primarily, I start them out at about a 125 and go from there. on most vocal mics. Why? Because that gets me in the beginning ranges. On most of my other instrumentation, guitars, keyboards, bass guitars, kick drums, tom mics, cymbals, things like that, I pick my frequencies accordingly. Sometimes I'm rolling it off at 30 hertz. Other times I'm rolling it off at 200. It depends on what the instrument takes in order to make it sound the most natural. Okay? So we have the ability to have that guy. Notice that when it's on, this is lit up. Okay? Notice when this channel is on, it's on. When it's off, it's muted. That's the reverse of what you guys have been used to. It's lights are on, it's on. Lights are off,
It
it's
makes more
off.
sense.
That's gonna take a while.
On is on, off is off.
Okay, I know, that's a brain buster. So, same thing here with high pass. When it's on, it's on. When it's grayed out, it's off. Okay? The next section that we have over here is the low frequency. Right now, the lows, if I select it and I increase it, we can see that we've got a shelf. That shelf starts at 125 of where that particular frequency point is at. And notice it's got a nice little gradual ramp into it that starts much further up, but where this begins to fully engage is at 125. If you're using a high pass filter, I typically would much rather have an adjustable Q. That way, I've got another filter to be able to manipulate that signal with if it's needed, than having a high pass filter and a low frequency shelf. Because you can have that engaged, and then you can also engage that. So, I mean, You could do that if you want, but if you're running a high pass, why not get one more EQ point back? That's how my brain works. Much rather have 4 bands to work with than 3, especially since I've already got that other one floating in there. Does that make sense, kind of? It's like the brown knob up top where you've got your high pass filter, and then you've got your 3 adjustable EQ points on your console. I'm giving you back another one for 4. Make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, question on what you're looking at there.
Yes.
On the board, on is on,
On is
off
on.
is off.
Off is off.
When you're looking at this here, the green, which typically to me says go, is actually showing you what's not being heard?
No, that
Or
is
it-
what's being
So
heard.
that's what's being
Yeah,
heard.
yep. So if we were to listen to this. Hear the low frequencies?
Okay, so now you've taken them out.
Now I've taken it
So
out.
the green is saying I've taken these out.
Yep.
If you were to push them up
If
and push that above,
So if I were to turn off my high pass,
right?
now I get all my low frequencies back. And if I wanted to,
Now you can boost them
If I
because
wanted
you're
to
saying,
boost.
give me more. Okay.
Which not really take away our lead, because it depends if it's above the line
Right,
or below the line.
right. That's what I was trying
So-
to
Adding
So-
above.
correct.
So green below the line means you're taking it
Taking
out.
it away.
Green above the line means you're adding it in.
That is correct.
Boost the price.
So I also have the ability in my highs to have an adjustable Q. So I can really narrow it, or I can widen it. Hear how many more frequencies I'm adjusting? Or how pinpointed I'm going to be. I can also cut that. I can also select where.
Nice.
Then I have the ability up here
Wow.
to do a shelf, to boost or cut, or I can have a low pass. So conversely to a high pass where you're allowing the highs to pass, now I'm saying low pass. At what point do I want those low frequencies to be engaged? Okay, where would you use this? On your guys' system, probably not very many places. However, if you have an input that has lots of high, like a really bad recording on your computer, you could probably use that. I would typically lend to using the shelf more so than I would the low pass. Reason why is because it's a smoother frequency transition. It's not as abrupt, so it's going to sound more natural.
You know what this
Follow
means,
that?
Jeff? They might actually be able to make you and me sound good when we sing.
Oh, ouch.
And it's not, I don't think it's quite that magic.
If not,
Going back to the effects
It
process.
had a
Yeah.
voice synthesizer. I
Between-
could sing.
the problem is pulling out the bad frequencies. I probably am just gone. It's
So,
just not-
so here's where I find this feature to be really cool. If I am going, okay, this is what I'm starting with, and I want to do some adjustment, just so we hear the change, okay? I would never EQ like this, but okay, that doesn't sound quite normal to me. What did I start with? I can leave all my settings here. I don't have to revert back to 0, but I can come here to this lower section where I can turn it on and off. So now, notice that this is grayed out. I'm listening to my initial
This is starting point. Okay.
and that change. Did I like that? Not so much. So
Can you revert back to A without adjusting anything?
You can just go back and forth.
yeah, so I just did on and off.
Can you
Between EQ1 and EQ2.
make everything back to EQ1? That's okay, don't worry.
Yeah, so the easy way to go through here and to flatten this is I can come in here and I can go to each one of my settings and double press 2 of those. and it'll flatten that particular filter. Okay, so my high, my mid, my low,
Specifically the top and bottom two. Just hit
specifically
those.
the top and bottom
So
two.
if you select low,
So if I
hit the
selected
top and
low
bottom,
and go
it'll
there,
just
it'll
start
flatten
over.
that frequency. If I want to flatten everything, then I can arrow up here and hit flat. It'll reset.
okay.
Okay, back to
Okay,
square one.
and now I'm starting over with my fundamentals.
Sometimes.
Okay, so that's kind of cool. The other thing that you guys should know about, you guys getting this? Because we're in Mixing Concepts 101.5, is that this section has a library. These have predetermined EQs that Yamaha has gone, well, if you're playing an acoustic bass, it's going to sound about like this. If you're a male vocal, it'll sound about like this. If you're
That's
playing a
correct.
piano, it's going to sound like this.
Gives you a starting point.
It can give you a starting point. Are they always right on? Never. Do they get you close? Sometimes. If you're unfamiliar with something, I recommend listening to it without recalling something out of the library. It's a library. That also means that we can store things to it. So, if we've got Joe up there on his guitar, rocking and rolling and screaming, dude, I love the sound of that EQ. I can actually scroll down here with one of up to my 200 presets and store it into that so that the next time he's up there, his EQ can be recalled.
So for example, Steve Massey comes in with his guitar, he's very particular about that, or that guitar is very particular. And, you know, you want to save that as a different kind of acoustic guitar. You've got different parameters.
And then it's finding it
And
again.
does he have more than one guitar?
Well, he does. I don't know if he plays
Yeah, I
more
think
than
he
one
only
here.
brings the one.
Yeah, because I've been when on rehearsal nights when he goes up there, okay, you bring this up a little bit, then bring it out, then I gotta try to remember
Right.
when next time he
Just
goes
save
up.
it. Yeah. Call it Steve Massey.
Okay, so that's our EQ section. As I stated earlier about mics that require phantom power, if we need to engage phantom power, that's in this head amp section where it says ha. We have our phantom power here, which is our 48 volt. If I wanted to, I just turn that on. Notice that this is muted first. If you don't mute it, it will pop through the system just like your last console would. Okay, but you don't need to run phantom power on everything.
So you,
Will it-
you select the mic that needs it? and
Select the
then-
channel that needs it,
Okay.
and then you engage it. The next thing over is a phase button, which you also had on your last console. Okay, you guys understand what phase does? Okay, cool. Dig it. Then this section over here, which is more advanced, this is our dynamics 1 and 2. This is where we can do gating, ducking, compressing, or expanding. We have that on every single channel.
Which is amazing.
Okay, so no longer do you have 1 or 2 units or none whatsoever. Now we have it on every channel. And we also have the ability to have a second dynamic engine. Compressors are on both 1 and 2, but aside from that, those are the only two that are mirrored in dynamics 1 and 2. One has a gate, this one has companding and de-essing. Okay, so if you wanted to compress something and then throw a de-esser on it, you would use both dynamics 1 and 2. Just like everything else, you have to actually turn it on in order to get it to function. Just like the EQ section, there is a library, so we can store that. So vocal EQ or vocal compression, yes, we want to turn that on. We can recall it, engage it, turn it on the individual channel, strip, and we're off and running. Cool? I tend to like compressors, they're your
So
friend.
that would be useful for someone with an amazing dynamic range.
I typically put compressors on everybody and almost everything. Why? Because it helps me mix. I don't use that as my auto mixing feature, but it helps me really control what's going on. The goal is to make it sound natural, to have dynamic range. Very good. But to have it there in case somebody decides to get out of hand, much better.
Okay.
It helps keep everybody in the congregation from going, and staring at you in the middle of service because you had an alto decide to really feel her oats that morning. Okay, or a guitarist that decided to hit his boost pedal and gets way out of control. Okay, so never happens. So over here in this section, we've got our inserts. Okay, you guys aren't running any inserts. We're running direct outs. So notice that on the channels that have Aviom associated with them, we also have the ability to see on that individual channel strip if it's turned on or turned off. So we could look from our setup screen and we could look from our slot section to see if it's there. Yes, we're there, but we also have the ability to turn it on and turn it off from here, which is what we want to do. It needs to be turned on if we want to send there. So with your last console, you simply went, yep, plug it in, we're good.
Telephone operators.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this way we've got to turn it on and we've got to turn it off. We also can see if the channel strip is turned on or turned off. Notice right now it's off. As soon as I turn that on, see, make sense? Okay, then we can also see if in this right section, it's associated with a mute group, meaning that if I've got a mute group set up over here with the band, which one is it, which one are you a part of? Every channel can be associated to more than one mute group. How fun is that? If you are muted in one, you will remain muted in the others. So just because you've got it off on one and off on two, and you're assigned to both of those doesn't mean that you'll come through the house. Both mutes have to be off in order to come out of the mains.
One equals all.
I explained
Correct.
that on the other side to those folks for saying it's like a pipe carrying a fluid, and each mute is like a valve along the pipe. And if you want the sound to go all the way through and be heard, all the valves have to be open. unmuted.
Exactly. Yep.
If you close any one of them, mute any one
It's
of them,
not gonna happen.
muted. Yeah.
Any one mute stops
Yep.
the
So,
flow.
so that's the basic input, how that works. So, I think we should have a little bit of fun now. Everybody on board? So,
Yeah.
what we're gonna do is we're gonna listen to an input source, okay? Now what I wanna do is I wanna put some effect on this. So, I could select here and increase this here. Notice that I'm automatically getting signal that begins to pop up here. That's because when I look at my effect unit, just like you guys would look at the front window on that device to see if you're getting input level and output level, I can see that I'm getting input at level and I'm getting output level. So we're taking a mono in, a stereo out, just for reference, okay? Now what I can do is I can select this channel, which is telling me stereo in left, which is here. Notice where my fader position's at. My fader position is all the way down. I'm going to turn this on. Notice that light lit up. And now I'm going to increase that.
Increasing the effect. Return.
And now we're listening to that come back through out of the house. So with lots of effect, no effect. Simply muted and unmuted. So I would find my happy place of going, okay, that's how I want that to sound. Okay, cool. Oh, and they're saying something. Now we need to listen to what they're saying. Okay, and the song starts and now we're back engaged. Okay, that's how that operates. We also can go to our sends on fader and I can increase and decrease that send level just like I would work a monitor. So if I wanted to add effects to a group of vocalists really quickly, boom, effects on a group of vocalists instead of going through and selecting and doing each individually, right there. Oh, and I want some on the acoustic guitar, okay. I want some on the other acoustic, okay. Exit that screen, now I'm back to my house mix.
But did the effects stay?
And the effects stay.
Okay.
Yep, so if I were to look here, my effects are there. If I wanted to adjust another effect at the same time, I just select the other one. Once I'm done, I exit, and and now I'm off and running.
So Ray, the only thing that doesn't quite obvious to me when going from analog to digital is with the effects. On the old board, if I had effects, I would unmute it and I would slide it until it sounded right. And and I saw you do that. You turn that knob and it got louder and softer, but these lights didn't move when you turned the knob, which is what I'm used to. I used to slide over
That's
here.
because it's metering at a different point.
Okay.
So the metering point is pre-high pass. So you were probably looking at the post fade. So if we are here,
I guess my misconception is the old system had a slider, now I've got a knob. That's
Yeah.
all I need to know.
yep, yeah, but no, so if I'm not sending anything, the more that I increase, the more you'll have there.
Oh. Okay.
So let's tie it in.
So you,
That's where you're getting the increases because
You're
yeah,
seeing
where
the
we
increase.
We used to function, here's the effect, here's my volume, and it would just get louder. Now you're saying, if I push my volume, I'm also pushing the effect?
If
Are
you, they're linked. They are linked. So because it's post fade.
Right.
So you are on that board. You were saying this is where my input's at, and then you would turn up your effect send, and then you could increase and decrease with your fader here.
The return.
The return. What we're doing is we are looking at our input. We're increasing and decreasing our effect send, just like you would on that board on 5 and 6. And then it's coming back into the console, and instead of a fader, we're working a rotable knob.
The knob instead of the fader.
Right.
That's what I was misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And those lights don't reflect a fader. This is not a
Correct.
digital fader. This
No.
is just a knob.
It's just a knob.
You're just
We're
adding
looking
and subtracting.
correct.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
it does.
I expected naturally when you twisted that to have these lights go up because I was trying to
Yeah.
use my old analog board.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
No. No. You're looking at your incoming level.
But it shows the level on the screen, doesn't
Yes.
it?
Correct. Yep.
It's a lot to digest.
Now I feel we're not even close to halfway.
Now, one thing I used to always look at when I was mixing is I'd look at the reverb, the sound effects box, and make sure it was getting enough input that it triggered, but not so much that it was overloading. And that would depend a lot of times on who was up there and how many.
Yeah.
Now, how do I monitor that now?
So how you monitor that now is that you can look at your rack and see how much your in and your out level is.
Okay.
So you still have the same way of verifying that. You're just looking at the effect unit, at what your in and your output level is.
So that's the button
And
I
so,
need to use.
correct. Rack 5, 6, 7, 8, and then external head amp. This is if we were looking at a digital stage box. Okay, so you're not using this.
And 5, 6, 7, 8?
Correct.
Is that, okay.
Yep.
So when you had this on,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, I want to put this on all of my vocals, it's just, you were working just with this
That is correct.
type of effect for them. That was it.
Yep,
If you
because-
wanted,
Because I selected.
so then you
that
push
one.
it and you say, here's all my vocalists.
Yep.
And I want them to have that effect like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can hit that one. Now, what if you wanted the next, so you would select the next?
So then
So you would,
we select the next,
okay, and set that.
and then set that, and then we select the next, and set that, the next, set that, exit that screen, and then what I want to do is I want to increase and decrease those
How
overall.
much?
Because those are coming back into the board.
Okay.
All four.
So all four,
Okay.
So I can,
independently.
I can
used to
tell
have
it,
one.
I can say like you just did, yeah. So you can say, I want them to have this much,
You don't have to use all
and
four.
then you can say, I don't want them to have any.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, this,
But
because
they're
that's,
still going to be at that level.
they're
You're just
still going to be
saying,
at that,
I don't
you're
want
just
it right
saying,
now.
I don't want that right now.
Okay.
It's
And
just
then you
like,
can say, I want them to have that much, I want them to have this much, but now I don't want them to have any.
correct.
Okay.
It's just like when you're mixing a monitor. Because, so let's step over here to your guys' old board, because I want you to be able to draw the correlation, whether you realize it or not.
You want me to move?
Well,
Yeah.
because I find, in my brain, I like seeing what did I know and now what am I understanding.
Because over here, before our reverb, we're seeing here which one we wanted.
Uh-huh. And how
Net,
much?
How much of each one, and then we're sitting here controlling the master volume of the
Correct.
reverb.
And then over on the unit, how much of what?
Correct. But here's what we also have to realize. We were sending out, whether you were adjusting, this is your overall. So all of these come to these master outputs. Okay? So just like we've got 13, 14, 15, 16, we've got 13, 14, 15, 16, all here. And then they're hitting the out. Okay? And then that's sending out to the unit where you can adjust your individual parameters. And then that's got to come back into the desk, which is what we're doing here. So instead of seeing, this would be the rotable knob.
Right.
And then this would be the mute and unmute.
Gotcha.
Okay? So, and by default, we're coming back to the main left and right. And by default, we're coming back to the main left and right.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
That does.
So we still have the same exact pathway to get from one point to another. It just looks a little
So the
different.
only knob I'm not sure I could find digitally is this one,
So,
back there.
walk with me. So,
Check down the corner till they look over your
so that center section is basically your master section. If I look right here, I've got my master button.
Got it.
This is my master send to mix 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Okay. And that's the four effects?
And that's for the effects sends. Here, we've got monitor 1, 2, and this one was the sub send. We're gonna look at putting the subs in the processor to send the feed off of the processor so you guys don't have to think about what's going there and what's not. We want certain frequencies below this part of the spectrum to go to the subs, and that's it. So whether or not you've got voices that are coming out of your mains, because they're not reproducing those lower frequencies, they'll be isolated from what that sub is doing. Does that make sense? Trying to make that a little easier. We're gonna see if we can make that work. Still crossing my fingers.
So the main reason I would twist this knob is I could tell on my effects when it was going into the red and clipping, or when it wasn't getting enough signal and it wasn't doing anything. Is there a similar thing here? It's,
In and out.
okay, so it's put it at a certain level, 0 or minus 15.
So you'll be able to tell here, right here, see where my levels are at? There and there. Also, under my master section, I can see that I've got levels here. So this is my overall send level. The other cool thing is when I'm here, this now becomes my master level for that send. Did I just blow your mind?
Somewhat.
So we're listening to effects. If I don't want effects, no effects. Okay, hear that? So here, I can increase and decrease that overall level.
Just the effect.
My effect send level, I just took it away.
Okay.
When I look at my master section, I now no longer have 1. So this one's 1, this is 13. So notice that I'm at +5 here. Where's my fader here? +5. So I'm going to bring that back to 0. Did I just confuse you some more?
All right, I'll play with it.
So here's my thought and my recommendation. There is Studio Manager that's able to be downloaded for Mac or PC. It's worth downloading to be able to get onto your computer and to be able to say, hey, this is how I could navigate this thing, because the layout mimics the layout of this. That's actually how I programmed this desk. I was able to go in to say, these are all my inputs, these are my outputs, save that to a USB key, bring it over to the console, plug it into the side, upload it from my thumb drive.
Studio Navigator.
Studio Manager.
Manager.
Studio Manager.
Yep. And,
Gives you a chance to practice at home.
if you pardon me for a minute,
Is it free?
it's free download from Yamaha.
Yamaha Studio Manager.
Okay.
And guys, I know this is a lot to take in, and it's maybe terrifyingly a lot to take in. The great thing about these boards is you can set so much more up in advance, so you don't have to do it on the fly. And I would recommend for a couple of weeks, well, actually, I mean, I think we've always wanted to say whoever's on Sunday should be here on Thursday to hear what's going on with the team anyway. If you can make it, please make it. And play with this. Just come in, maybe when you got extra time, come in and turn it on and play with it and see what you got. Put in an input and play stuff and get to know the board. Because that stuff you can, I mean, you can learn it all, you can download, we're dumping information right now, but it's only going to get in your hands if you sit here with your hands and do
My
it.
only question on that is, if we do that, which is great, I'd like to see the basic setup that Pat
Right,
sets up in one on recall and locked with a
absolutely,
password.
Correct.
locked.
Yep.
Okay.
So one of the other really cool things that if you've got an iPad, they do make an iPad app. This device can be hooked up via Wi-Fi so that you can get on it and you can go in.
That's perfect, so Chris
well,
can
I'm up
run
to do
everything
that.
from
He
the
can run
front.
everything
We don't need to
from the
come in.
I just became obsolete, okay.
So,
Keep in mind, iPads don't multitask, all right?
so you have the ability to do that as well, to get out of this space, to walk out there and to do all of that. So the one that, this is the app that's for the CL5, same company, but when I updated my iPad, I didn't download the LS9. The other cool thing is that if you're also using the one for the GLD, then you can get in here and you can also have
Theoretically, if our pastor
both
was
options
singing and he
available.
had two iPads, he could not only EQ himself, but he
but
could run
change
the board from the front.
Yeah.
You get one of those foot pedal
So,
things? that-
You don't, so
Lay there
therefore,
at the board,
so
and
therefore,
the drum and the cymbal.
so therefore you're obsolete.
And he's throwing the media shot from the other iPad.
There you go.
He's
Yep,
in total
exactly.
control.
Yeah,
I'm the one-stop
You're
shop.
just,
Yamaha
you're
AV
just,
controller?
yeah.
No, that's different.
No,
Everybody's obsolete now.
Except for the pastor.
you need to type in LS9.
That was fine, okay.
So, so there you go. That's the basic kind of how you get around, how you can kind of.
And his next job is to teach Laurie how to use it.
So,
Stage mix.
what you have to know is that things are set up so that they route straight to your main left and right. Okay?
Yeah.
I highly recommend when teams are getting dialed in to mixing and understanding the console for the first time, for the first go around, is everybody be here. Because somebody's going to be standing here going, how do you do this? I don't remember. And one of you may have picked up and actually remembered it. The other one of you may have gone, well, I don't remember how to do that, but I remember how to do this. And you'll begin to feed back and forth off each other.
So that'll be
The-
this Thursday. We all should try to be here.
So the other thing that I highly recommend is that you guys stay with the same layout and feature set for the first little while. Once it is set up and once channels are where they should be, don't go plugging and unplugging and moving things around, because it may have worked for you for that week, but it may not work for the week that's coming up. And if there's no documentation, or you haven't picked up the phone and said, hey, I repatched this,
Yeah.
I changed where that was at, then it's going to do nothing but create frustration for the person that's coming in behind you. I like to look at installation of technology like this much as a team building tool or exercise. You find out how good your communication with each other truly is. You also figure out a lot of grace and mercy and forgiveness when you mess something up or you change something, and once again, you don't talk to somebody else about it. I go, I look at those as opportunities for God to grow us and strengthen us. So, communicate with each other. If you change something, if you guys have a thought, talk amongst yourselves as the group to really say, is this the best move? Not just, it made sense to me, so you live with it, but this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Does this make sense to you? And is this a good move that we should really make as a team? Because you guys are laying the foundation for what it should be. Because you guys are here every week. I'm here installing it with the best knowledge that I have to be able to make sure that it's set up well for you. But you're going to have to go in and set up your EQs. You're going to have to set up your monitor mixing. You're going to have to dial in your effects. You're going to have to ultimately dial in compression and gating. As you begin to learn and get comfortable with the console, this desk can take you to the next step and to the next level. So really make sure that you're talking a lot and not getting in over your head. Any questions, you can call me at 541-552-1212.
One big change then is we used to have the vocals on one slider, submix, and the instruments on the other. So what I heard you just say is, by song, everything's going left, right.
Everything is going left, right. There are no subgroups on this console. There are no DCAs on this console.
So is that something we should adjust to, or is that something we're looking to restore later?
That is something you should adjust to.
And then we go in elsewise and adjust how we want it going out of that single main.
So you no longer have subgroups. This desk does not offer subgroups, and nor does it offer DCAs like the console in the other room. So it is simply adjusting my faders and done. If I want to increase those levels, then I'm doing it as a group and as a whole. You're not doing it with two faders or a single fader to make that change. I also don't recommend linking all of your vocal channels. That's typically less good. The things you want to link are primarily your stereo inputs. Nothing more than that. I've had churches do that, try that, and then get themselves in a lot of trouble. That's why I throw that out there.
Just as a, like, I want to bring all the,
Like I want to bring all my faders up, all my vocals up at one point and all down at the other, because once you go and reach over to adjust the level on Mary Lou because she's singing louder, everybody else increases or everybody else decreases.
yeah, I can see that. And when this was on, one was on and one was blinking, does that show you that it's linked?
That's showing me
That's
that
what
it's
saying?
linked.
The
Yep.
32 is linked to 31.
That is correct. So when I bring this fader up, the one next to it also increases. Let's clear out of all of our effects in so that we don't mess you up. Oh wait, I've got an idea. Scene memory. Basic. I'm gonna come down here. I'm gonna hit recall. And now my console is back to how I initially programmed it.
Sorry, I missed that. How did you do that? Back
Scene
to
memory,
So I had all my stuff here,
Right.
came over here to recall, hit enter,
enter.
and it takes it back to the initial settings.
Can we do that from a,
Basic, that brought it back to what he had, this basic,
Yeah.
labels basic. If he had another one, he could, you see,
Every-
recall,
Yes,
whatever.
yes, Jeff, you can set a new scene.
but that was already, that recall thing was, screen was there. So let's say I just came in and turned on the machine. It's a different
So
scenario.
we're here. We're in our home screen.
Okay, home screen, that's what I wanted to know. Now get to the recall.
ET phone home. That's what I like to do. So I'm gonna come here to my scene memory. I'm gonna scroll down, so if I'm up here, I'm gonna see, if I scroll the scroll wheel, that just increases my numbers.
Okay.
So I'm gonna toggle down with my arrows, hit recall.
Now, okay,
And
that's a
now I'm
basic
there.
move that we'll probably do a lot
So
every
these,
Sunday morning.
Oh, it's like-
Scene memory.
I think you're gonna have to make a scene for the 9 o'clock service, and probably a different scene for the 10:30 service.
Right.
And those should always be right there, and you can just hit recall for each one.
So what I encourage people to do, this is where the communication comes into play, is that if we have a scene, so you guys set it up this week, you make sure that your band knows practice is going to take longer. We're starting with a new console, much like you starting with a new instrument.
Got to
We
tune it.
now have to dial it in for where we're at. Okay, so everybody's stress level must remain low for us to maximize our time and maximize the investment. So we're going to start and we're going to actually build our scene. So I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. Then I'm going to scroll up to 2 and I'm going to store. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to clear this one. And I'm just going to throw in here test, okay? Oh, I'll throw in here Ted. Well, I don't know why, because maybe Ted's leading. Do I want to store scene memory 02? Okay. So now I've got Ted in there. I now want to take that same worship team. So this is the 9 o'clock hour and it's a little bit more chillaxed. And the 11 o'clock hour really amps things up. So I'm going to come in here and look, I'm amping things up. Now I'm going to scroll to my next scene and I'm going to store, and I'm going to say 2. Okay, now I've stored Ted 2.
Or 10,
Following.
or 10, 11 o'clock, or
Yeah,
whatever you
I
want
can
to
store
call
them
it.
whatever I want that
Okay.
notation to be. Many times it's the date and the service number. Serve 1, serve 2, so on and so forth. I come in for the following weekend. I don't want to mess with this basic TED scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come up here to TED, and then I'm going to copy that. Do I want to copy that scene? Why, yes I do. Now I'm going to scroll maybe down to 10. Okay, you guys just gave me a really funny look. So we'll scroll to 4.
Well,
Yeah, it's just a different name, it's just a
And-
well,
different
if,
name.
well,
And so I
You
have
can see
copied
everyone,
it.
Why would you skip all 5
Yeah,
of them?
so I've copied it. Now I'm going to paste it. Paste scene. Okay.
Then do your
So
adjustments.
now I can store, I can make my little adjustments
Right,
here, and I'm going to store that.
gotcha.
As 3.
well,
And so now I've done that. So now I've got TED 1, 2, and 3. And now I can work here, making all my EQ adjustments, my fader changes without affecting the week before. So I really encourage people to start with, okay, this is what we're working here. Now let's copy that and save that
playing with
to a
the
new
copy.
one. That way I'm building off of that foundation and I'm not messing it up. So as far as let's get the parameters up, loaded, and locked, yes. Now what we want to do is we don't want to manipulate that first one. We want to save that to a new
well,
one.
if I bring up the first one, I think you can cut out a step there. If I bring up the first one, okay, then I do all my manipulations. I start off here with TED 1. I do all my manipulations. Now, if I want to save it, just save it then, instead of having to copy it first and then recopy it and then save it back.
Yeah, so the reason why I say to copy it and move it, it's because you can double click scene save and hit enter and it'll overwrite what you did.
Right.
So
You
we
want to have scene 1 be inviolate, nobody ever changes that.
We want
That's
that
our
to
basic.
be our initial setting. So this has our patching, this has our EQ,
If you,
and then we go from there.
if you call up scene 1, our, initial setting,
And if we
and
were
you
to-
start playing with, I'm gonna move this to here, I'm gonna move that to here, at what point does it save that to that scene 1?
It will not
Will it
save it
remember?
until you
Okay, so it's
save
not gonna
it.
remember where you've moved them to.
That
So
is
if I-
correct.
If I play with that, move this up, move that down, turn the thing off,
It'll power back up in its last known state.
It'll go back to that?
No, it will not go back to 10.
It'll go back to what scene one was
It'll-
when we initially set it up?
No, it'll go back to how.
Wherever it was when
powered
you turn it off, it'll come
Gotcha.
back to there.
And then if I went and said, recall scene one, it's gonna go
Correct.
back to what we did the first time, not to what I messed up.
That is correct. And that's why I'm saying, to build your library,
Yeah.
copy and paste.
Okay.
Because that's gonna save you from messing something up.
Right.
Okay, now,
And once you guys get down the road and you find, this is where we're living, this is our happy place, then you can actually save that back to your initial. Okay? And that's really where you can get that foundation. You can clear out your other library steps, but until then, as a worst case scenario, you always have something to revert to.
okay, now, on this, scene one, we can, password protected, where we can recall it and copy it.
Yes.
But we can't change it.
That is correct. Yep, yep. As soon as you lock it, so
And
there
I think
is,
we'll do that and also save it onto a USB.
so see this little lock over here? All I did is scroll up here to this area. So I was down here, locked. So now, if I try and, it won't let me store to it. Notice that
Can't overwrite it.
Doesn't have a,
it
doesn't have a
won't
save
let it
function.
happen. But as soon as I unlock it, the store pops back up.
Okay.
Yes, Lee?
I'm thinking about what we do in the sanctuary. And it's sounding to me like there's sort of a unnecessary step in what you just described. Because what we do in the sanctuary is we recall a scene and then we adjust it for whatever it is today. And if we like that and want to save it, we save it again as a different scene. No copying and pasting.
That's what
Yeah.
Glenn was saying, but the problem with that is that if you accidentally save over the top of it, you just killed your original.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
so-
because you
so-
don't have a separate save as function,
Correct.
sounds to me like.
Yeah, so there is a confirm, but the reason why I say copy when you're learning is so that you are consciously making that extra step.
Right.
I want to go from here to there, and now I know that if I save it, I'm not gonna mess something up that's in that initial. Because you guys are gonna be the ones setting the admin level, the privileges level. And if you set it up so that, hey, you know what, even I have the ability to lock and unlock that, then yes, you can store over what you did. So that's why I'm saying, if you take your basic scene, copy it, paste it to where you want it, and then work from there, you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're not messing up that first one. You guys have been functioning in there with that desk for a while and know how it works. So you can actually eliminate that step. All I'm saying is that I've found it easier and the most safe route when people are learning the desk to consciously make that copy, paste, so that they know they're not gonna mess it up. Because I've had churches work for over a year on the basic scene, and then somebody recalled the initial scene, and they lost all of their changes. And I got a phone call on Sunday morning saying, hey, Ray, we just recalled our basic scene.
Another
How does
thing
that
we've
happen?"
done in there, we can save a scene, like the basic scene, on a USB flash drive. And
Yep.
set it aside.
Yep, and that way,
So that if and when that happens, we can use the flash drive to
exactly. Yep,
restore it.
we
Well,
can,
that
we can
wouldn't be a
also say
bad
that
idea
here.
either.
No.
It's just, it's the same thing as with computers.
Yeah.
You have to actually
Put a
back it
backup.
up. Yeah, so.
But if we
'cause
put
we
the
all-
administrative lock on it,
Yeah, on the initial one. I
and
think
we
that's
all
a-
just
that's a
say, you know,
wise
you don't go in and unlock it and change it. You just leave it locked and you don't.
I would also
store
love,
over.
I know it's extra work, but I'd love for us to get like a 3-ring binder with some paper in here, and as you guys discover stuff like, this is something we really need to know. Write it, just write a note, so the next guy coming in say, I don't know how to do this, oh, but here it is, because, you know, Chris figured it out last week. This is what I need to do. And it's just kind of create our own FAQ as we go along.
Now, Ray, you've been through this before where churches set this up, but so my gut reaction would be that the three of us at least agree that when we save something, we put our name on it.
Yeah.
So that, I'm talking about a naming convention here.
Yeah.
And I'm asking
No, I
Ray
think
if that's gonna work. So
Mhm.
I would say if the three of us save things, somehow we have our name or initials on it, and then we can decide how to identify it, but that way, I won't mess up the thing you worked so hard on.
Yeah.
Would
One-
that work?
Yeah, so when I was mixing on a desk, lots of volunteers, people in, people out, we actually assigned number ranges for the various members to work from. So-
That's why you jumped
so-
to number 10.
So when I would mix, I was allowed 1 through 50. Okay? And then Rod would come in and Rod would mix and he was 125 to 150.
Okay.
And then Craig was 150 to 175.
Okay.
So they knew that they could come in and copy any one of my scenes because I was one of the most experienced. Okay, I had most history and so on and so forth. They would actually pick what resembled the worship team the closest, and they would copy that into their section and work from that. Why? Because I had already done a lot of the hard work and the finite work of setting gain, compression, gating, EQ, and that way I knew where I could find my scenes. They knew where they could find their scenes,
And how many scene numbers do we have?
up to 299.
So if we now agree that you have 0 through 50, you have 51 through 100, you have 101 through 150, that would be a start?
Yeah, and that way you know where you're going to look every single time. Which ones did I do? And initials are great. The comment section is also great and very beneficial. And I typically found that dating, initials were good, and then comment section actually said Joe lead 2 guitars, or whatever the case may be, as the worship team changed up, because we all know that planning center doesn't always hang out forever, or that, the worship list from a year ago shouldn't still be floating in the sound booth. And making sure that, but I can recall that, so.
Would you recommend before we actually do this on Thursday, a trial practice that we have the band members come individually and EQ them individually? Okay.
Yeah, if
Does that
they're
make sense?
available,
If they're available,
definitely.
however many we can get here, I think it'd make Thursday a lot easier. If
Yeah, that's
one of you guys.
my thoughts and observations were, one, all of us being here on Thursday would be ideal.
Yeah.
And two, like Ray said, rehearsals will take longer. Should take longer. And
But-
just my thought is, thinking about what typically happens on a Thursday, even once we got comfortable with the board, I feel like what they do on Thursdays, it wouldn't necessarily even allow us to do what we would want to do back here. That we would have to go to them and say, look, we're gonna have to change practice, just to give us time to work through as you're playing, because sometimes it happens so fast that you'd be like, well, okay, that's great, but
And that's why I think getting the initial setting for each person individually.
Yeah,
And then trying to put
and getting
together,
them muscle
tweak it.
changed over on well, this is where you start and this is how you set it, so that they're all starting the same way. And, because we're constantly running, well, they put those wedge monitors up there where they're overpowering the mains, and I have to turn the mains off because people blasting people out of the building. And that's, it's like, okay, I got the mains down to 0, that's still too loud, well.
So what I hear Chris saying, and what I would suggest is, anybody wants to have a beautiful EQ setting, it's gonna happen before Thursday's practice.
Right.
Starting Thursday practice, we're just gonna worry about getting the board working, period, and maybe some volume settings. So please, nobody be mixing EQ cutoff filters during Thursday's practice. If you want that on your instrument, it's gotta be done before this Thursday's
So you
practice.
say, Zach, come
Has to
in,
be
we
on-
need to get your voice, we need to get your guitar, we're gonna work out the compression and the gain.
If you want.
and
if you
and-
want.
On
If you want.
Thursday practice, we're just
Or you
worried
can do it
about
next
getting the
week.
board to work.
Or next week, they want, it has to be on
Yeah, next week they
or
can.
whatever, has to be on
come in.
a single one on,
So I will email all the praise band group, all the tech people that if you want something special done, it has to be done before Thursday's practice.
Or outside of Thursday.
Outside of Thursday.
Not during Thursday practice.
Not doing it.
Okay,
Or
I'm-
after.
I'm gonna shut this down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Or it could be like on a Monday or
So unfortunately, I have a 5:30 meeting on Thursday.
this week, next week,
So
3 weeks.